Hey again, everybody. It's Mr. McComb. I'm going to help you out a little bit with some of the brain check pages. I got my special guest here today, my daughter Sophia. She's she's just a budding star in the making. She's going to hang out with us too while we're doing this. So today you've got the Sum It Up page 224, and the brain check starts on 225. Just make sure you do the vocab with that. I did want to walk through a couple bits of the other parts of it. So this is, I think, page 226. Um, just to follow up on some of the things we talked about the other day, here we have number 3. Number 2, you're just going to rearrange the food chain. This is not correct. We don't have all these things happening. Remember, we got to start with producers and then get to our herbivores, first level consumers, and then the second level consumers. And keep in mind, this bacteria would be a decomposer. So make sure, again, you rearrange that in the right way. So you're going to take what you have here and put them in the right order and rearrange it so it's a good looking food chain. I do want to look at number 3. Here we have an energy pyramid like we talked about just in our last video. And a couple things with this. Part A is talking about how much energy is used and how much is passed on. And that's for any level of the food chain. Now here we see of the food chain of the shrubs at the bottom would be our producer. Our deer would be the herbivores or first level consumers. And then the wolf would be a second level consumer or a carnivore. So with any of these along the way, remember we talked about 10% gets passed on and 90% of the energy gets used just in normal life stuff when they're going through their daily lives, running around, moving around, or if they're plants doing photosynthesis, that takes energy to make energy. So here for part A, we're going to fill in a couple things. So we're going to do for those shrubs use what percent and then pass on what percent. So again, most of that energy gets used up. So that's going to be 90% of the energy is used just in the daily lives of these organisms. Okay, and then when they get eaten, that means that energy gets passed on. And just like we talked about moving the decimal points and how we can use those skills to help us figure out the different amounts of energy going from one to the next just by moving the decimal point one to the left as we go up. That's because only 10% of the energy is able to be passed on. Okay, so 10% there. Okay, so there's that. That's kind of a good way to review and talk together about it. The next part's B and C. Which organisms get the least amount of energy? Keep in mind, again, as we go up, it gets smaller and narrower. That's where there's the least amount of energy. Then we can have more energy the further down we go. So the wider base is going to be the place where there's more energy available, or in this case, when they say most plentiful, there's got to be lots of plants, right? Just like we talked about the squirrels and the hawk and the acorns. There's got to be lots of those acorns to support all those squirrels. So keep in mind, the bigger that section of the base of the pyramid is, that's where there's going to be more energy or more of those organisms available. So as you answer B and C, just look here, see where's my smallest amount. The least amount would be, well, where the top is, right? So think about what organism that is, okay? Number 4, I'm just going to go through with you. This always is, for whatever reason, a little bit confusing because we usually don't think of sandwiches as parts of food chains. But let's take a look at that. So it says, many food chains use the sun's energy to produce the food in this sandwich. The cheese came from milk from a cow that ate grass that took energy from the sun, for example, and then fill in the other chain. So really all we need to do here is look and see what other things do we see on this sandwich, okay? So we're going to have sunlight energy provides energy to the plants that do photosynthesis, and then we get to eat those things, okay? So this always seems, for whatever reason, to be a little confusing, but I'm going to go ahead and fill in arrows. Remember, we're going to have our arrows show the flow of energy as it's moving along. And then we just need to label and tell what are these other plants that we see here. So if you look at the sandwich, there's no meat on this sandwich. It's a cheese sandwich. It's got a couple of vegetables. So one I see is tomatoes. So we're actually just going to fill in tomato. Okay, and then we've got the arrow going from the tomato to us when we eat that. So there's that first one. If we look at the other stuff in there, what other plants do we see? Well, I definitely see the green stuff there is lettuce. So we can also have another food chain of the sun provides energy to the lettuce, which then provides energy to us when we eat it. So again, the flow of energy. Keep in mind those arrows show where the energy goes from the sun to the lettuce and then to us when we eat that. The last one is a little bit one to think about. The other stuff we see is, so far we see cheese, tomatoes and lettuce, and then we have also the bread. So if you're not sure, we don't want to say bread. We don't grow bread. We make bread. But the plant that comes from is wheat. Again, that's a good one to look at and think about there. So the wheat energy from the sun goes to the wheat, and then when we eat that wheat, we get that energy. So here, again, taking the sandwich and breaking it apart into the different parts, each one of these we can think of as its own food chain. Sun gives energy to the plants, which then we can eat that food and get that energy for ourselves. So here would be our producers: tomatoes, lettuce, wheat, and then our consumer in this case is us. So that's a good thing. So keep in mind we are animals, just like we talked about animals and ecosystems. We can apply these kind of concepts to us when we talk about our healthy life. Oh, don't you do that? Okay. All right. All right, now we're going to go to the next page here. Number 5, I just want to point this out to you guys. Here it says, label the role of each organism. Some have more than one role, and we're going to use these terms. We need to make sure that we're using all of these here. I'm going to go ahead and circle these parts here. So it says use these terms. Yeah, that's not good. We're going to use these terms. We want to use the term producer, herbivore, carnivore, first level consumer, second level consumer, and decomposer. Okay, so you're going to want to use each one of those. So make sure as you use them, just cross these off. Okay, don't just put what you think each one of these is. Take the ones they give you here and kind of use it like a word bank. And if I told you got to use at least one for each, and some will take 2, that's what you want to keep in mind. Okay, I'll tell you this right now. I'll mark out a couple spots. So every part has 2 lines, but not every one of these is going to have 2 roles. Okay, so I'm going to do this. For the lettuce we see here, I'm going to put X's on the second line because you're not going to need to fill that one in. And then also for the fungus here, the mushrooms, think about what role that plays in breaking down the dead matter. Okay, funguses and mushrooms might look like plants, but they're actually those special kinds that break down dead matter. So I'm going to kind of use that as a little hint. Okay, so now you've got 2 of these lines marked off. So that basically I'm telling you here, we need 1 role for the lettuce, 1 role for the mushrooms, and 2 roles each for the owl and the rabbit. So again, use these terms. Think, where's my producer? Which one's an herbivore? Which one's a carnivore? And then first level and second level consumer. Again, you might want to look back in your book and see what we're talking about with those. Okay, so then now you're going to fill in these 6 blanks with these 6 terms. Okay, so hopefully that'll be a little bit of a help there. Okay, all right. Let's go to number 6. Number 6 is about if there's disruptions to an ecosystem. So it says a drought has affected an ecosystem. Many plants have died for lack of water. If there's not enough water, they're not going to be able to survive. Remember those limiting resources. What do you think will happen to the other organisms in the area? So think, okay, well, some things need to eat those plants, and if there's not enough plants to get energy from, that would help or hurt the other parts of the ecosystem. Okay, so think hard about that. If there wasn't grass for the squirrels to eat, say, or acorns for the squirrels to eat, how would that affect how many squirrels could survive? And then how would that maybe affect how many owls or hawks could survive? Kind of like the energy pyramid we looked at yesterday. Okay. So think good about that. They give you lots of space here. You can probably just write in a few sentences. Think about what eats the plants and what might eat those things that eat the plants. And it can things like this can mess up the whole ecosystem, food web and food chain and energy pyramid, all that stuff. Okay. All right. So again, with that one, give me a good paragraph answer. Don't feel like you have to fill up the whole space. Maybe you could probably just do 3 or 4 lines. It'd be fine. All right. Then we're going to go to our last page. Okay. So a couple of things here to, again, just keep in mind, we're going to be filling in the arrows showing where the energy is flowing. Okay, so it says our first step here is draw arrows to show what the hawk would eat. Don't draw an arrow from the hawk to what it eats. We're going to show that flow of energy up the food chain. Okay, so here's our hawk. One thing I know for sure a hawk could eat would maybe be a little mouse, unfortunately for the mouse. So we could say, let's draw 1 arrow there. Now, there are certainly others, but we could have an arrow. We're going to have, again, point out that energy goes from the mouse to the hawk, and that's how that's going to go. So look at these other organisms, too. Lots of organisms I see now. The deer might be a little big, right? So use your good thinking brains. Would a little hawk be able to eat a big deer? Probably not. But there's a lot of other ones I see. I'm kind of looking. I see at least probably 3 other organisms that the hawk could eat, okay? Now, another thing it says, identify 1 complete food chain in this food web in the correct order, and they give you space to write it out. So what I want you to do is write that food chain in here. You can draw the lines and think, okay, I'm going to start with a producer. So here's some grass. Here's a tree that would be a producer. Then go to the first level consumer, which would be the herbivores that eat it. So maybe you could say the bunny eats the grass or the chipmunk eats the grass. And then go to a second level consumer that would eat that organism as well. So some second level consumers I see are an owl, a fox, the hawk. So we only need to identify one food chain, right? So remember we said a food chain is just one straight line from one to the next. It's not taking the whole ecosystem. It's just one to the next. Producer, first level consumer, and then a second level consumer as we go through. And again, so you can draw the lines and arrows to identify them, and then also fill them in here, kind of like you can have the arrows fill in the blank along the way. Make sure you show that, kind of like we did for that example with the sandwich. Okay, so keep those in mind. Okay, and then the last thing is it just says explain what might happen if the grass in this food web were to disappear. Think about what would eat the grass. There's things that would eat that grass and need it to survive. And if that grass wasn't there, things that like the bunny or the mouse maybe wouldn't be as able to survive as well. And then after that also it goes another step, right? It's not just them. If the mouse is gone all of a sudden, if there's no bunnies and there's no mice, think about how would that affect the owls or the hawk or the fox. Okay, again, those guys need food too. So this is not just a one connection point. When those producers go away, if they're all of a sudden gone or something happens in the ecosystem that causes a problem, it impacts the entire ecosystem. So think about, again, that energy pyramid and how it would be affected, or the food web as well. It's not just the things that eat the grass. There's a lot of energy that transfers all the way up that food chain. So keep that in mind as you go through. Okay, so you've got that. We've kind of walked through some of the biggies I wanted to talk about. So again, use your book and review. Make sure you go back and do this. I think there's some good key concepts we've talked about this week that hopefully you're picking up pretty well. I hope these videos help. We're going to go ahead and stop recording now. Sophia, can you wave bye to everybody? No, she's just going to be shy. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.